So this class is an ongoing floating crap game, meaning to say we never know what's going to happen, but there is a consistency. And we try and tie in what we said last week and the week before with what we're going to say today. We'll give a little bit of review. And the general subject is meditation and prophecy, which is the title of the second part of Inner Space, which I was privileged to do back in the late 80s. So it's really a lot about what Rav Aryeh Kaplan was about, what he wrote about, how he thought. To this day, Inner Space stands alone as a very unique contribution in the English language to Kabbalah. So it's a very special thing that I never taught it until last year, and that was published in 1990. So I waited a long time, and then in the intermediate years, I learned a lot on my own. I took the cue from Rabbi Kaplan to delve deeply into the sources. That is one of the main things that characterized him, who he was. He was able to learn a lot of things, he had a wide base of learning. And when he put it together in a way that people could understand it, or at least it's deceivingly simple when he writes it. These classes took place in his house, in his home. There were two sets of classes, and the people who were there were a group of psychologists plus other people, and they wanted to know how Kabbalah applied to their practices and to their lives. So he tailored it for them that way. And then, since he had everything always taped and transcribed, so he meant to make a book out of it. And then he passed away in 1983. So I got it in 1987, and the book was published in 1990. So it's a little hard to get, but it is definitely available. And I also have PDF copies of it in my computer, and also somebody is just going over it now and recreating a Word file. So whatever, it's an important book. If you want to know a little bit more about what Kabbalah is, he gives it. He sets it out in a very, very orderly way. He goes deep, and his mind is alive with ideas. And so what we're going to do today, we've been talking about, he calls the dream center, the imaginative faculty. We translated from the Hebrew, koach hamedameh, the ability to imagine, visualize, which was part of the prophetic tradition. So it says in one place, which I'll give you in a moment, that a lot of what prophecy is about was detaching or unwiring the subconscious and wiring the spiritual centers to the dream center. In other words, our ability to see images, which we've done a lot of practice with in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, is we did a meditation where I asked everybody to picture the front door of the house that they either grew up in or that they were most familiar with. And then we went in the door, you looked at the door handle, you saw what the door looked like, and you went in, you see either the hall or the staircase or the living room or the kitchen. You just go anywhere in the house and you can just see it. And it was like very clear to almost everybody here that, wow, so interesting. You can just see things, like, and like your unconscious has stored it all away, and you can the details of what you can see if you imagine your own home. It's fantastic. And then we learned a few sources in which the imaginative faculty is used to go up into the higher worlds. And Isaiah is the paradigmatic example. It's chapter 6 in Isaiah where he says that I saw God sitting on a high and lofty throne, and the seraphim, the angels, were there before him, and they called out to each other saying, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. It's a famous scene that was incorporated into our prayers. And hi everybody. Everybody did you say hi to? Hi. Okay. This is what I have. I made 10. So share, okay? How are we doing there? Oh, I need you to double up, please. Thank you. Great. Okay, she has one now. All right, so if anybody comes in, we have that for them. And in the meantime, somebody else can use it. It's a little bit different when you have, because I squeezed it up a little bit and made the print smaller and added something. So I always make more paper in the world. I want to look at is, you have here the Dream Center, and on page 2 of the Dream Center, actually the bottom of page 1, but without the footnotes. He says that your first experiences of spiritual reality are usually very vague. You don't know how to really put your finger on what you're experiencing. You get a feeling. He says it in the second paragraph. Most importantly, it's a feeling of the divine. The next stage, which is the actual preparation for prophecy, is to bring that feeling into contact with the part of one's mind that produces images, the koach hamedameh, the imaginative faculty, or what I call the dream center. And he takes it step by step, and he develops it. And this is the beginning of a whole part where he's going to go deeply into prophecy, and especially the prophecy of Ezekiel. And he's going to explain why Ezekiel, more than any other prophet, was more explicit about what he experienced, and not just about the content of what he had, but the actual experience itself and the stages that he went through. And that whole thing is really what we're going into. So, but that we're going to do some meditation in the class, but it's going to be always based on something that we're learning about. So the basic idea here again is not to negate the image making, the image factory. Hi. But and basically in my lexicon, my vocabulary is Paro is the great filmmaker of the mind. And he gets in there and he plays his movies and he keeps your attention. And the children of Israel are trapped in Egypt and watching Paro's movie. And Moshe has a very difficult job. Moshe has escaped from Egypt. He was born there, but he has this holy soul, so he was able to get out of Egypt. He goes into the desert. This is Egypt. He goes into the desert and he goes up to Mount Sinai, and he has this amazing experience where he leaves his physical consciousness. It says that Hashem says to him, take off your shoes, which in our tradition means divest yourself of your physicality, and I'm going to zap you. And the whole thing that you'll have in a minute. And then Hashem says, okay, now go back to Egypt. And he says, no, I'm not going back. Can't. Send somebody else. And Hashem has 7 days, they say, that he convinced him finally to go back, and that he'd be able to do it. Because to confront Paro, the image maker, And now we're mapping it onto ourselves to confront the image maker, the one who's thinking all the time and using everything he can to keep you occupied, right? The monkey mind, they call it. So to confront him and to take the children of Israel, who are the powers of the soul, who are now in the meantime been completely taken over by Paro, to release them, to bring them up into the desert, to have a God experience, to be on Mount Sinai, to be up into the spiritual realm, and then come back down, and to live that in this world, and to build a Mishkan where instead of this becoming Mount Sinai, and this becoming the desert, and this being Egypt, that this becomes the outer courtyard of the Mishkan, and this becomes the inner sanctuary of the Mishkan, and this becomes the Holy of Holies, and you become, right, you've transferred from being a slave from Egypt into somebody who's a servant of God. That's what you've. So how do you do that? How does Moshe, who is, in our books, he's called Dat Pinimi, inner awareness. When it says in the Torah, over and over again, Vaydiber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, so Moshe is not just Moshe back then, and it's not just a story of what happened, it's Hashem speaking to that inner point of godliness within each one of us. But Moshe again has to come and confront Paro. And what he has to do basically is he has to take the knife away from Paro, or whatever, the camera away from Paro, and use the camera to create a new movie, a new type of movie. So what Rabbi Kaplan's talking about here is to disconnect my dream center from my lower centers and reconnect it up to the higher, so that it can now be it can now help me to experience the spiritual dimension. So there's a problem with the spiritual dimension is that an angel, for instance, has no form. So he says, here you can see it on in page 2. Yeah.
Is it also, remember we were saying that page it's like Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, and then so does that also flip, or does that stay in the same order as well? Right? That like, you're saying that like we're reversing reversing the connection, and then eventually this becomes the Mishkan, and then, but it still stays.
It becomes a true Yud Kei Vav Kei. I mean, when Paro has us in his grips, so our Yud Kei Vav Kei is co-opted. Our power is co-opted to create the lights on Broadway, to create a civilization that's antithetical to God. So we instead of destroying that civilization, we rewire it and we bring godliness into that civilization. The idea is always to transform, not to destroy. To take the ideas, the beliefs that we've gathered over our years and our experience into the person that we become, and to be very ecological. We don't have to throw away anything. We become transformed as the person we are. But you need that Moshe to awaken in you. So I was just going to say about the angel thing is that on the paragraph that starts, it's very likely that some of the prophetic disciplines were created specifically for this purpose, namely for detaching or unwiring. I would write it differently now. I mean, I did the editing here, and he spoke it out in class. So it's not exactly so clear. To detach or unwire the subconscious and wire the spiritual centers to the dream center. Basically, it's to wire the dream center to the spiritual centers. So, excuse me for that. If the prophet does this correctly, every different nuance will have a different imagery. And again, the language of the unconscious becomes now the language of the superconscious, because the language of the unconscious for sure is images for most everybody. I mean, you're not going to dream text usually, right? God said to you, go to bed. Yes?
What do you think about your thoughts regarding the whole idea of people who have mental disorders such as schizophrenia, and how would that relate to, do you think that is related to being able to attain a higher, to be able to tap into higher spiritual realms?
Yeah, when we have the right psychology, then those people will become actually more easily flow into the higher states. R.D. Lang back in the 60s wrote books. He was into. Then you have the Options Institute in Massachusetts. The Kaufmans, and they are dealing very deeply with people and their psyche, and dealing with autism and stuff like that, and just helping somebody. But you're going into that reality with them, and then helping them come out. So,
Would you know to have an easier time achieving prophecy and reaching a place where they would be able to receive prophecy?
well, again, it's hard to generalize, but my answer is yes, because the border, the boundary between the left and the right brain is much less. There's no compartmentalization. That's one of the problems that people have, but it can be used. It can be used to the positive. So yes, sometimes he may see an angel with 4 wings. Sometimes another time an angel with 6 wings, and Ezekiel saw with 4 wings. Isaiah saw with 6 wings, and there's a whole reason behind that, but he's just bringing it now as a simple thing. And yet another time he may recognize Michael, Michael, or Gabriel, right? Angels who actually appear in the Tanakh, in the book of Daniel, and speak to Daniel. He may see a complete picture of an angel, although this image is not what an angel really looks like, for an angel has absolutely no form. The image is being created totally by the mind. So down in 21, it's a little small there, but it says the angel is real. It's just that in order to reveal itself to the prophet, it uses the prophet's brain to create an appropriate image. That's very interesting, because I've been looking into this for years, and dealing with near-death experiences, and like everything that's been written, both in Hebrew and in English, and what people have experienced. And certainly one of the most famous statements was in one of the first books by Raymond Moody, in his called Reflections on Life After Life, where a woman says, "I was in a place of all knowledge." And I was in a place of all knowledge, and it is impossible to describe to you what I saw. The colors in this world are all, nothing compared to the colors. But we now have physical eyes, and it's not physical colors, but somehow the colors in the spiritual dimension, when not in your body, are much more powerful. So we have certain very important statements, and we mentioned it already maybe a week ago, that you utilize information to give your dream center, your imaginative faculty. You utilize information that you gather from things like Isaiah and from near-death experiences, in order that you can approximate with your own inner work where you want to stand when you want to stand in the spiritual realm, and where you want to go. I have my own thing that I like to do, and I'm certainly willing to share it, but the thing is that we know that it's partially imagination, because while we're in the body, there's only so much we can experience or understand in that realm. But it's basically the avoda, the work here, is to become sensitive to utilize that which we have at our disposal. So I need information to know how to do this, right? So what Rabbi Kaplan did, especially in his treatment of Ezekiel's vision of the chariot, he's giving us a lot of incredibly important information. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you this week is from the Ramchal, and what he says, which is brought here, plus what I've been able to gather afterwards on my own from the Ramchal. So that's one of the most important things I wanted to share with you today. And I've given out the 10 copies that I have, and I'm asking everybody to make sure you have a partner to share with. Then there's another 10 copies here of something we were learning last week, which is a text from Rav Isaac of Kamarna, one of the great Kabbalistic Hasidic masters. And those who have been here should have that already, and then I have more for those who weren't here. And we discovered an incredible thing about his writing last week, is that he speaks in the third person. He says, like, the imaginative faculty that it must be stopped from conjuring any images or thinking any thought associated with the physical, as if his soul has departed. This is called divesting the physical. At this point, the power of his imaginative thought is used to envision and visualize and bond his soul with the supernal universes. So what we did is we started reading it in the first person. And that we said that the theory is that he wrote it in the third person to deflect attention from himself. And that really, though, what he was writing here, besides what he had read from others and just had all this information, is what he had experienced. And so you have a hidden text here in which he says, the impressions of the objective reality of all the lights there then became fully engraved in the subjective reality of my consciousness. I saw the chambers of the angels in their respect. He's writing in third person. I'm just transferring into the first person. And it became very interesting. So we're in the middle of this text. And so before we go back to the other one, this is what I wanted to finish today. Who doesn't have? It's only 2 on this side? I'll give you 3. Okay. There's 3. It's on page 4 of that set. Okay. So the 2 sets that you have, at the top of the first set is the word inner space. At the top of the second set that I've just given out, it says developing the imaginative faculty. So that's the this whole set, the developing imaginative faculty, we did 2 things prior to this, one on page 1 and one on page 3. And the one on page 3 and 4 was Rabbi Chaim Vital. Very beautiful, very powerful text. And what Rav Isaac of Kamarna is doing is he's, in a sense, regurgitating what Rav Chaim Vital said. It's like a 300-year difference from Chaim Vital to Rav Isaac of Kamarna. And he, like, in other words, from the late 1500s, and now we're into the 1800s with Rav Isaac of Kamarna. So whatever, 250, 60, 270 years. But it's not just a regurgitation. It's completely passing through the subjective experience that he has had, and that he in many places of his writings is very, very autobiographical of his own experiences. And he's very much he's a clairvoyant. He has a lot of sensitivity to that type of experience. And so here he's showing it. And again, as we're going to read it in the first person, I'm going to just completely, that's the only change I'm going to make here. Otherwise, every word I'm going to read is written here. So at the bottom of page 4, it goes from there all the way till 3/4 of page 5. So give it a second just to look at the first 2 paragraphs yourselves, just to reacquaint yourselves if you were here last week, and if not, just to get into resonating with what he's saying. And you can read it in the first person like we're going to, if you wish, also. If any words are not clear, so.
It's different than what you gave out last week.
No, this is exactly the same. This is this, yeah. Actually, before we start, so um, get comfortable and relax. Sit in a comfortable position, and let's do a little visualization. With one little difference from what I said before, I want you to see the door, the front door, and front wall, side wall, whatever, wherever that door is, of the home that you grew up in or that you spent a lot of time in. You could do the one now, even any home that you've lived in. The difference is that I want you to know, I want you to take that the home that you lived in and raise it up around 1,000,000 miles up into the heavens. It's the same house. It's not going to be any different in what you see, the details. But with your imagination, you can just add that one extra factor. So before you fall off, go into the front door, because there's nothing under you except air. Look down and see the air, but don't look too far. Okay. And if I could ask everybody to do this, okay? All right, so good. So any house that you want to, if you want to do the same house you grew up in, or the home that you live in now, the apartment, the hovel. See the first thing you see when you go in the door. Which room do you see? You want to look around that room. Living room, dining room, kitchen, bedroom. Maybe there's a staircase leading upstairs. Anything you want to come. This is free imagination time. But it's very, very special if you look at the carpet or you look at the floor. You can see if it's wood. You can see if it's anything else that that it was. You can look at some furniture. It's all exactly where it was when you grew up or where it is right now in your own home. And of course, you're aware of yourself as you're doing this, but what you're doing is you're focusing your attention into this little home here, and you're walking through its corridors. People do this nowadays on computers with three-dimensional rooms, and you can turn and this and that, all kinds of things, but we're doing it inside the old way. It's a fantastic starting place for how to see things with your eyes closed. The bed, your bedroom, dresser. Windows. That you liked. Get some of the energy from that also if you need to. There's much more here than visualization. There's so much you can do here. There's people, if you want to allow people in there, and there's events, there are major moments in that home, in that place. Everything is at your disposal. you with your consciousness, not even imagining your body doing it, but with your consciousness, you can leave yourself inside the house in terms of a little piece of yourself. Go outside of the house and see that this house is some kind of a high place above the atmosphere. Not in, but more in like almost like amazing valley, amazing mountains, very shining world. In other words, your consciousness into the house, and now you've left part of it there, and you can go back into it anytime, but now you've expanded your consciousness outside of the house. The house is just a little place within a much, much larger dimension. And we're not going to do it now, but if we would have time, if we give time to this, and you can do this anytime you want, then there's things you can do to guide your own meditation here. Meet somebody or some special people here who will be the higher aspects of your own soul. Ask to give you insight into your life. Well, let's come back now for just simple coming back to where we are. Say goodbye to that for the moment. Once you've had a vision of sorts in your own mind, it's possible actually to go back and to recontinue anytime. Versatility of the mind, of the imaginative faculty, it's wondrous, and it can be used. It can be used for very, very positive purposes. Okay, so we're going to start at the bottom. It says the impressions of the objective reality of all the lights there then became fully engraved in the subjective reality of my consciousness. Of the angels in their respective watches. All this I accomplished through my imaginative faculty, whose images are retained in my sech, my nefesh maskelet, which is my intellectual soul, which in turn to bond with these images of the supernal universes. This internalization process continues. Literally saw. So what are these saying? It says utilize the imaginative faculty to go up and in Chaim Vital, who he's building on, he imagined that his soul was of a huge tree going up, and connecting to a trunk. And then he imagined himself going up within the trunk, which is the sphirot, and raising up Malchut to Yesod, and then three of them to Netzach, all four of them to Tiferet. He literally raised up in his mind, he raised up the sphirot, all the lower highest sphira, and then he continued carrying that all the way up into the root system of this tree, and he used his imagination to do this. And then he said, I came down with the lights that I saw up there, and I impressed those images in my imaginative faculty so that I could come back into my intellectual mind and understand what I saw. So it's a little bit hard. It's easier to do than to talk about it. But I just wanted to give you that what they're trying to do here. This is like 500, 300 years ago. Their Hasidic master here, and then the one before master who learned with the Ari, and the Ari taught him how to do certain things. So, like what we're trying to do is, and it's saying in this book, is let's revive this type of. It's not the only type of meditation, but it's definitely something that's very, very possible to utilize in your inner growth process. And it's for anybody left to go anywhere after a while. As the Baal Shem Tov says, there's no need to just take away what's preventing me. You're preventing you from knowing that you're in the spiritual dimension, because this is the context within which our lives exist as a spiritual. So before I go in, let me just look and see if there's anybody who's like, have any look at this. How do you relate to it? Yes.
My question is, I always think that to be very spiritually refined yourself before you're able to receive from the Almighty. If you're not on a very kind of holy level in your observance and all the things you do, then there's no way you're going to be able to. Is that correct or incorrect?
Even if it would be correct, even if a person would be coming in from not having done any work until now, but with serious desire, serious intentions, then it's not hard to get the first few levels here. It's not a secret society anymore. Whatever was in the past opened up into anybody's invited, but with serious intention and with the ability to or not I'm not talking about ability, even with just the desire to find out what is inner work, what is it, all right? Where does it all go? What's it about? What's Earth life about? Why did we come here? What are the possibilities? And what's the importance of doing spiritual work right now at this time? And I can tell you that after hearing on the radio that people were killed today in Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim, this type of stuff sounds like a little bit like, what do I want to do this for? What do I need this for? But this leads to this is one of the avenues into a deeper relationship with the spiritual reality, with whom we're connected. What we want to do ultimately is to our roots above, not just any technical term there, but real souls who care for us and with whom we have been connected with from the time we were born, and could even be now some as a result of our actions and our whatever we do could be connected to other souls. And that connection between heaven and earth is very important now. The time is exactly calling for this. That the many we live in will not just seem like just one closed room anymore. Because there's one-way mirrors looking down. But when we look up, it doesn't seem that we can see anything. And that's been the way it has been quite a while, except for very rare individuals. So anyway, it's very important to try and help anybody that we can to have access to these deeper levels now. And again, as I said, imagination is only one of the many, many aspects of meditation that we want to do. But that's a lot of what he's going to, especially when he gets into Ezekiel. So again, the aspect that it's Torah, and Torah learning, it involves being open to what our tradition says. And he just did such an amazing job of making that available. So, and that we're going to just try and continue that. and give over during the next few months more and more of what's possible, what's consciousness, and what are we doing with it. We're learning a lot of, and yet the panemiya, the inside level is how prayer works. To answer your question, everybody and anybody who's sincere. Let's go on in this a little bit. Again, transferring from third person to very close to the top, he then unifies. I then unified divine names. He was very much into this. Unifying divine names is a practice in Kabbalah. See, it's fairly advanced, but the simple of it involves intertwining the letters of two or more names, so that you have Hashem's name Yud Ke Vav Ke here. Well, you intertwine into it the Aleph, for instance, all right, and it becomes what's called a Yichud or a Shiluv. It's an intertwining, and two energies which give you access to the energy behind. And then there's doing it with three names. There's Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud at the bottom. There's Elokim, and there's Havaya, and there's Ekia. There's four names, and then there's different combinations and trias. The Abram system involves, for instance, from 5 hands, taking any word and breaking it up and doing all the different combinations in your mind or even on paper, and using it to get to start to resonate with the letters. And it's better off in the mind itself. And then you just go and you lift off into a world of letters. Now, letters are not the goal, but letters are a midway point between words, conscious, and spiritual realities. So letters themselves, the left brain doesn't like letters, so to speak, per se, because letters don't have a meaning. I want words. But letters are a lift-off from all left brain thinking into that. It's very similar to Pythagoras, who loved mathematics, right? Numbers are the language of the creator. Right? So by us, letters, and letters, of course, will values. But some of the techniques that they used were how to get out of physicality is to utilize divine names. So you specify divine names and intended to receive light from the point of the upper root of my soul that is bound and connected to the 10 sphere of Dvatzilut. The names of Hashem, they each have a divine, they have a frequency, and they each have a zero. So for him, this was the most natural thing, is to get out of order. This is the 10 names that appear in the Tanakh in the form of the 10 sefirot. Right, at the bottom you have Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud. At the top you have Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey, Ehiyeh. And you have the right and the left, you have Yah, Havaya. Oh no, excuse me. Okay.
We were imagining it really
I
well.
see.
Yeah.
Different vibration.
Sorry about that. Good, okay. Behind this, the names of the Sefirot, which I was holding up a second ago, right? This is their typical structure. And then just with the names of Hashem, the names of the Sefirot themselves. So this same structure here with the inner level behind the names of the Sfirot is the names of Hashem, such that you begin to see that there's a system here. The Tanakh does not reveal itself as a system. It's just a narrative, but there's a system behind it. And then it gets to nothing is in it. There's the one I was looking for. Here is the same system with one name only, but each time with a different voweling, so that they all have a vowel except the last one at the bottom, which is a funnel for all the rest. So behind the specific names that appear throughout the Bible, and those are this level here. And behind this is one big Yud Kei Vav Kei. And what it means is, and behind this is one big Yud. And all of it is in one big Yud. And behind that Yud is what's called the Kutzosh Yud, the apex of the Yud. And that behind that is the Ein Sof itself. All it's saying is that the way that the Kabbalistic system is it gives us a chance, a bridge. It gives us a ladder of how, to utilize, to get back behind, to go up above, to go deep, deep within, right? What reality is. And it gives us through names, through letters. And then it takes us beyond words. In other words, one of the reasons we don't say this name of Hashem's name is because it's not within the framework of human language. It's a formula. So that's what he's saying here. That's not what I wanted to go into, just to give you an example of what he means to unify divine names, to intend to receive the light from the upper point of my soul that is bound and connected to the 10 Sfirot. So again, for him, once you internalize the map, like I said with Chaim Vital, you see yourself as a branch coming down from a great tree, and the tree is the tree of life, and then you go up within the tree, and you connect to the source of your soul within the tree. Using an imaginative tree, it's not really a tree, it has nothing to do with trees, but trees are complete systems. In that sense, yes. But so it's just an example of a particular meditation that he had that's based on this basic system of Kabbalah. And I'm not making too much out of it. It is what it is. I continued unifying divine names. Again, the gematrias of divine names are awesome because they all interchange with each other. Like 26 and 21 is 45. 45 is a significant divine name. 26 is, 21 is. And then 26 and 65. That's two names, Aleph, Dalet, and Yud, and Yud Kei Vav Kei. 26 and 65 is 91. 91 and another 21 is 112, a significant number. Then it goes up to 128, 138. It goes up to 250, where you have Yud Kei Vav Kei, Aleph, Dalet, and Yud, Yud Kei Vav Kei Elohim, Yud Kei Vav Kei Ehyeh. That is 250. 3 times Yud Kei Vav Kei with each of the main names. And then if you double it, it's 250 times 2 is 500. And if you triple it and quadruple it, you get 1,000. And 1,000 is the gematria of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. So you get the system behind is that we're in a physical world that we believe is created by and directed and guided by the infinite one. And that the Torah, it gives us access to understand who we are as individuals, who we are as a collective, what all of humanity is all about, why we're here, and what is up ahead, and what our job is of how to get there. So I'm trying to give you a meaningful context within which this stuff is. It's not just playing with my, my imagination. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to say I know all of this, but I'm trying to give you that's a meaningful context within which inner work takes place. And the idea of calling this inner space is because he says in early in the book that the world is the outer space, and the purpose of the world is man, because we're the inner reason why Hashem created the world. Human consciousness. I'm not sure I know exactly where it is. It doesn't matter. The inner pipelines of human consciousness is where it's happening. It's not going to happen out there. It's not going to happen in the UN. It's not going to happen in the European Union. It's not going to happen in America. It's not going to happen in the buildings. It's not going to happen on the outside. It's going to happen inside of you and me. And so inner space it seems in the Western world, because it's relegated to meaninglessness to have an inner life, right? Because everything is outside stimulus. But the true inner work, that when we get away from Paro in his movie, is the delicate, profound experience, inner experience of God. And that changes the world. And that's what the real nuclear bombs that are going to go off. They're going to change the world. And they're not going to hurt anybody. Just finish the text if we can. Okay, let's try. Next, as we go from that high pinnacle, by means of unifying divine names, and by the power of my own connectedness and bonding, I drew a new illumination down to them, to the 10 Sfirot, from the infinite light, all the way to their lowest extremity. As the light descended to them, they rejoiced and shone an aspect of the very light that I drew to them into the soul root, into my soul root. So he's saying very interesting. It's basically, again, just, you have these, and if you don't have one of them, I'll send you an email, is you see Chaim Vital and what he said, and then you see what he's saying. Chaim Vital said that you go up the inside trunk of the tree of life all the way into the root system, and you draw light down into the Sfirot. And then when you come back down, they then send you light from the light that they received as a result of your inner work. Whatever it means, that's what's being said here. We'll have to think about it, right? I now descended by means of unifying divine names. Again, like he's really into it. To bring as much of that light down until the light and the influx penetrated to my nefesh sikli, my intelligent soul. From there, I continued drawing it down until it reached the imaginative faculty in which an image of those lights that my intelligent soul perceived became an actual physical image in my brain. Again, to read this once or twice is minimum. First reading is not, you can't, because it's just a bunch of words. But he is describing an internal experience and within a system where you can access a higher level of consciousness and bring it down into yourself and have it settle down and impress itself in your being. And then when you come out of the meditation, you know something has changed, and it's not just imagination. In this way, with the power of my imaginative faculty, I perceived these lights and chambers physically, exactly as my intelligent soul perceived them spiritually. Finally, these lights became so real in my mind, again by virtue of the imaginative faculty, that I even began to perceive these spiritual realities with my physical eye. Which is something that Kabbalists talk about, is that when they go around and walk around the world, the shuk of the world, Mahame Yehuda shuk, right? The physical world, after you've touched the spiritual reality, you come back into the physical world, and the physical world is different. It's no longer a impediment to spirituality. It shines. It's filled with everything you need. Everything becomes a meaningful action. Everything becomes a meaningful thing. I've experienced, for sure, I can put myself completely behind that statement. In the Baal Shem Tov, anybody want to say anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if it's about that spiritual experience and bringing it down, then why aren't we sitting all day and meditating and just working like that?
Our prayers are all about going into a very in and up place. Most people just haven't been told how to do this and how our prayer system is based on this dynamic, and to come back down afterwards and come back into my life. Het Bodedut by Rabbi Nachman is pulling back from all of the external aspects of my life, dissociating from my image of myself, my understanding of myself, my anger, my emotions, my problems, my physical, my emotional, going back and back and back into a very, very almost scary place for a lot of people where I don't even know who I am, and then going into a deep, very deep sleep, and then continuing to talk to Hashem some more, going into a deep, deep, long silence, going out again into talking, coming back, and after you do it a few times, then you say, okay, I'm coming back now. When I'm coming back, I've just divested myself of all that I know about myself and all that I identify with in order to connect to something that I don't even have a name for. And then I want to come back into all that stuff now and have it transform because I've connected. That's what I think we should be doing when we're davening. And then, of course, also, even when we're not davening, and there's plenty of chances to do it. You're asking why the Jewish people are not doing it now? We're about to. It's time.
But we're not like Buddhist monks, there's definitely people in the world that sit and that's all they do. And there's, they just do that all day long.
I don't have time to be all that time, right? I need to work in the world.
So that's where, we take it out and then do it and take whatever enlightenment we have. And Judaism believes in engaging in the world. It's not just about doing that.
Yes, and I've spoken in the past about Abram when he welcomed the angels, right? So he was on a hotline with God. The rabbis say it was literally hot because it was the third day after his circumcision. And he said to God, hold on, call waiting, don't go away. And he went out to meet the guys. And he thought they were guys, but they were angels, and that whole story there. So what I call where he was before that, it was in this position. He was just completely there. He was in an incredibly advanced state. And then he said, wait a second, don't go away. I'm going down here. Because there's something about being like you, God, that's even just important. The Talmud says it's more important than being with you. The reason that the Talmud does a specific spin on it and says, Gadol hachnasat orchim mihakbalat penei Shechina. Greater is the receiving of guests than the receiving of the presence of the Shechina. The Talmud had a reason for doing and saying that it's better than. But the truth is that this doesn't exist without this. Certainly in any real, you must have a be with God experience in order for you be like God experience to be real and to have power to it. So we have to constantly go back and forth into this relationship, this inner. And it's only, I like to use my hands like this. It's a dance, it's nice. But I hope that you understand why I'm making the point here is that for sure we've forgotten how to do this. It's not part of the religious thing. But there's such a desire, and Hashem knows this. So it's going to come down, and we have to be the ones to do it.
Yeah, something. In reference to your question, which is a really great question. So we live in an existence which is both physical and spiritual, and there's certainly a whole train of thought which is just to basically transcend the physical and dwell in like a spiritual realm our whole life. And I believe this is just like from other teachings that I've learned that we bring healing to existence, and we like bring like wholesomeness to existence not only by bringing consciousness to spirituality in that realm, but because we live in duality of the physical, we live within our own bodies as a physical and a spiritual. It's like a dance between the physical and spiritual, the soul and the goof, and then like the world and then the whole spiritual plane that is behind it. When we allow ourselves to reach a very spiritual plane and then return to our goof, that not only it does like a double good. Not only are we bringing consciousness to the spiritual realm, which is regular gratification, but by returning to our physical body, we're like showing up in like the physical world, which is where we're supposed to engage in, and then we can kind of like plug in all that spiritual like healing that we received and implement it throughout humanity. Just
Good.
like existing.
Good. And yes.
You used an image before that I couldn't work well with it, but listening to the conversation, it becomes more germane. And this is the idea of the house that gets raised. If you are able to achieve spiritual connection, you can bring that connection back with you into your everyday life, so that even cutting an onion or washing the kitchen floor becomes a transcendent action, because you're aware of the implications of what you are doing, how they're going to affect other people, the ones closest to you, and how the effect on other people is going to affect relationships and dynamics within the household.
Beautiful. In that sense, the whole reason for going up is in order to come down. Moses went up to the top of Sinai to bring down the tablets in order to bring them down, to put them in the heart of the Mishkan, which is the heart of the Jewish people. It can't be up here anymore. It has to be here. But I need this. I need to be able to have access to this, right? We said last week, going up the mountain, there's Orthodox Judaism is a certain base camp. We believe in Torah from Sinai. We believe that God spoke to Moses. We believe in the commandments. Down here is conservative reform, reconstruction, and deconstruction. And up here is prophetic. So this is the base camp. But basically, you ask most base camp people, can we have prophecy anymore? They'll say, no. Don't even go there. But what is the desire for something higher that's burgeoning in our generation and that's coming into our hearts and our souls? Is it wrong? Just learn Talmud. Yeah, but I've learned Talmud and I want to learn more. No. Bless you. Anyway, so prophetic Judaism is it's only for individuals now. It's not a collective reality yet, but it's what do you call it? It's being birthed, right? And because it is the next stage in human existence, and we have this in all of our books. And I've put them all together in my books, all the sources for this. Yeah.
Can I ask a slightly more technical question? Sorry. Is this something that can be gifted as well as worked for, like a closeness? Can that be a gift that you can receive on occasion, or some people consistently, or is it something that you can only work for?
No, absolutely. It's a beautiful thing in chapter 26 of the Ramchal's Mesilat Yesharim, the last chapter. An amazing book, Mesilat Yesharim, 10 levels, 26 chapters, using all the whole Kabbalistic system to write a book that is read by everybody. He says it's actually, in his words, I guess he doesn't use percentages, but he says it's 5% work and 95% gift. There's only so much we can do. And so really the gift is when an Abba, when an Ima sees that the child wants to do something and is striving. So there's an opening. There's an opening. When Hashem sees that we want. Anyway, I believe so. And therefore, most of what I have is a gift, for sure.
But he speaks about the 100-watt and 1,000-watt light bulb as well.
You saw that? Yes. So
Means that some people that have a greater capacity and some people less. That was what I understood from that.
No, that's not what that was about.
Okay, I misunderstood.
No, I mean, it might be true, but the way it was being used is that Hashem's light, he has to diminish it from 1,000,000 watt light bulb to 100,000 watt bulb to a 10 and to a 600 and to a 100. And then we begin from the bottom up. The light is there. It's a gradated system where this physical world hides godliness to a great extent. But when we sensitize ourselves to this inner dimension of our lives and begin to want it and desire it, that's what heaven is looking for. It says in Psalm 14, hey, hello, is there anybody down there looking for God? Right? It's the second verse in Psalm 14. Is anybody, did we do this on Sunday, Yitzvi and Yonatan? What's the pasuk? Whatever. Is anybody down there looking for me? And they say, oh, there's one person. Oh, so we'll pay more attention to that person. There's a verse in Psalm says, Yehi chastecha Adonai aleinu ka'asher yahanulach. May Hashem's light and love be upon us to the degree that we hope in him. Well, hoping meaning to say connecting. The more I connect, the more I can pull down or amplify the God awareness that's there to be, right? The more I make myself into a willing vessel, the more I can become. And how heaven works is that the more I refine myself, the more I'm capable of receiving. And the more I receive, the more I'm capable of refining myself. And the more I refine myself, the more I'm capable of receiving. And the more I receive, the more I can refine, and the more I can receive. That's how I believe, and I've been taught, and I've received and been helped to understand that there's an active relationship with Hashem himself, with his great souls above there, with whom we are connected. There's Abram and Sarah and Rachel and Leah, all these amazing, amazing neshamas. And we are sparks of their souls. So when we start to do this work down here, heaven is very, very happy. Okay, the world doesn't seem very good right now. It seems to be getting very dark. That's part of a historical process that's culminating in very shortly in our lifetimes. So when it gets dark outside, it doesn't mean that the work we're doing is not working. See, that's very important. Don't ever, I was just meditating and look what happened. I don't want to do anything else anymore. No, so you have to be very, very careful, right? Or whatever, a little bit humble in this area. I'm going to finish the thing because, with your permission. Second, the last two paragraphs. At times, I was able to perceive this inner spiritual level, but at times, it was impossible for my physical eyes to perceive spiritual things merely by virtue of the power of the imagination. I was therefore only able to perceive the external level of the universes. For example, I beheld the vision of the Holy King speaking with me. Yes, I saw him, and I heard his voice. And this voice is truly the voice of the divine, filtered through all the above-mentioned levels. At times, however, my physical senses were not refined enough to receive such a powerful influx. Like Daniel, I therefore beheld the vision of an angel, which is less intense, in order to ensure that I wouldn't be overwhelmed completely. There's a story in Daniel there where he's walking along the Hidekel River along with his friends, Mishael, Azariah, and Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, otherwise called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Nobody remembers the song? All right, anyway, that's the names that they were given by Nebuchadnezzar. But so he's walking along the river, and all of a sudden this vision begins to, take form before him, and the others know that something is happening, but they have no idea what he's experiencing, and they run for cover. But he has this incredible experience where this angel comes, and he falls on the ground. He describes it there. And the angel leans down to him, and he says to the angel, I can't move. It's too powerful. And the angel lowers his energy and touches him, and he gets up, and there's this whole thing. That's Daniel. Like, what do we have in our tradition? But the point is, you learn these little scenes, how Samuel had his first prophetic experience, how Abraham, how Moses, and you build a picture, right? These are important details that are going beyond the narrative into what I need to learn. So anyway, he says here that I was only able to imagine an angel at one point instead of something more because I just wasn't on the level. Last paragraph. And generally speaking, at first, I saw and heard only with my spiritual faculties according to the capacity of my soul. With practice, the images were then processed and transmitted to my physical senses. You see a lot of interesting things here when you read it like this, or even if you read it the way it's written, is that you can have a spiritual experience, but it doesn't have very much imagery to it. And so he said, I mean, a person who prays and who goes into a serious standing prayer and who bows down and comes up and stays on the name of God, and there is what to do. It's not just like, oh, I said God's name, I must go on. No, this is where you wanted to get here from the very beginning of the davening. Stay here for a second. This is what you worked for. If you don't know how to stay here, then have to learn something about what it means to stay in this incredible place where you've just gotten up from the bow and you're standing straight and your head is slightly tipped upwards and your eyes are closed. Right? There is what to do here. But this is only a spiritual experience. There's no vision involved. There's maybe a vision of some letters. There's particularly where the aleph is lifted up by the yud, and then the second aleph is lifted up by the highest yud. And all of them all get lifted up into the yud. And the yud is a perfect letter here because it's so small and so you can keep your attention on it and you can utilize it to be in God's presence. The letter is secondary. It's God's presence that you want. But the letter gives your mind, your imaginative mind, something specific to do and allows you to get into a place where you can actually receive something. Last paragraph. Generally speaking, at first, I saw and heard only with my spiritual faculties, according to the capacity of my soul. With practice, these images were then processed and transmitted to my physical senses. I then began to see the God of Israel and hear his voice. I smelled and spoke with my physical senses. The Spirit of Hashem spoke within me, and his word was on my tongue. For my physical senses became refined to the extent that I perceived lights, and the Spirit of Hashem literally spoke through me. I will speak. Hashem will speak, and I hear and behold. So there was an experiment to do that. You have the pages yourselves. It's a document that has to be, worked with. And then it has to be put on the side and you have to do what you can do. And it has to be, an attempt to, first of all, believe in ourselves, that we are, our birthright is that the Torah that we're learning, the lives that we're living we should dedicate them to a higher purpose. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody can be and has to be perfect for this. But to be positive enough to believe that the reason that we've been born is to have these experiences, to utilize them, to be better, to do things that we need to do, to be open to the guidance of our higher soul. So, Do we have a guitar?
Can that sometimes be color as well, besides letters? Color?
Of course.
Color? Sometimes it counts as color?
Me?
No, in general, like art, that would be a way.
It's possible. I'm not aware of my own ability to see colors. I do whatever I do, what I do. But yeah,
It might not be letters, it could be just light or color. or
no,
something
of
like
course.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of openings here. Hashem speaks to us in the physical, our physical. Just pay attention to the physical world around us, the trees, the plant life, the mountains, the sea, the ocean, the biosphere. That's an environment that we live in, right? That we know is sensitize ourselves to not taking things for granted. We said once, I have it in my book on the ladder of ascent, is that the physical world is it says in King David, Noten lechem lecho basar ki le'olam hasda. Hashem gives sustenance to all creatures, for his love is infinite. Behind the physical world is an emotional reality, a love. I give to you. I'm giving you a world where I want you to recognize that the food that I'm giving you, that the things that I'm giving you, the water I'm giving you to wash your face, is a gift. Don't take it for granted. And behind that emotional reality called Chesed Gevurah Tiferet is Chochmah Bina V'Dat, is a consciousness message. I want you to recognize me behind my world. And there's a keter. I want you to know the purpose that I created you. So there's the 10 Sfirot are a ladder that we can climb up into a meaningful relationship, right? And then again, always bringing it down into how I'm going to live. So they all have colors, right? They do have colors. I just happen to see them. Yonatan, what do you want to play? Kivinu Kivinu kol yom. O Mitzvah He said, Kivinu is we hope in you all the day for your salvation. For your salvation, we hope all the day. Kivinu is a kav, to make yourself into a conduit for the very salvation that you are hoping and making yourself into a kav, into a conduit. So deep. Thank you. Amazing. Bless you, everybody. Amazing. Thank you. Come back. The more often you come back, the more consistent can be the building of what we want to build here. We're going to continue learning part 2 of inner space. If the pages that I gave out didn't get to you, I have one set here of the Dream Center that has Ramchal that we're going to do next week. We're going to do Ramchal on the Aspaklaria Meira and Aspaklaria De'ena Meira, the shining lens that the prophets talk about, and the non-shining lens. And that Moshe saw through one lens, and all the other prophets saw through 9 lenses. And what's that about, right? Okay, so that's next week, hopefully. Yay, thank you, yay.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody.
Thanks for coming. Sign in.
Yeah, please
This was